Nice.
Just got the copies on mail from my armed forces.
New York trip over spring break.
Does it?
Yeah.
Let me know. I want to
Planning a New York trip over spring break.
Is it? Oh, send it to me.
Currently planning travel.
It's just
Yeah.
not that
We have
I'm
8 kids
money
now,
off of it.
so not that many.
It's work. You
With
got
adults,
credit
so
for
like,
it.
It's fine. Did you get 50%? Only the seniors came? Right, yeah.
Used to like every other year, and then COVID kind of stopped. And then Joe wanted to last year. I was like, absolutely not my first year on the job.
That's great. We don't need that.
Right? Put the bright lights on us, huh?
Just kill us,
Nobody
Matt.
wants that this
Too
morning.
much.
Yeah.
Nobody wants
Hey,
that.
I love how like blue, green, red.
Is that what the blue people on here?
Happy Chinese New Year. I was like big red. And I said we're like Christmas lights here. You look at this.
Keep track of that.
Hey, Josh and Matt.
It's not mine.
Hey, Josh.
Josh
Now we
and
know
Matt,
about
can
that.
we touch base on this Black History event after this quick before I send out another email or
Yeah, I have a little time that we could do that.
Yeah, you see Sean? Because I was like, well, he was copy there. I was like, the dean office.
Yeah, no, he called me about it. Don't worry.
Yeah. But I think the keyboard too, because I called Donna this morning. I was like, hey, are you involved in that event? She's like, no, it's special events. I'm like, definitely keyboard.
Yeah, we can talk about
Morning,
it.
how's everyone? Good? Yes? Loving life this semester? Wow, look at this. So we've got the assembly of all of our faculty and, well, not all of our faculty, and our standard. So today I just thought we could have a little bit of a conversation with you, share our thoughts and our experiences with graduate school specifically, and then professional development opportunities, things that we do, that you are doing right now and that you will continue to do after you leave here, both preparing for graduate school and then just as part of your professional careers. We all have very different experiences and kind of have gone through our schoolings at different times. And so I thought we could go ahead and share some of those thoughts with you. How many of you are considering graduate school? Yes. Okay. So a group. Some of you are, I know, do you have at least a couple who are applying to graduate school right now?
Could I
Dr.
add?
Carey's applying to
No, sorry. Could I just add as undergrad? I had no idea. Like,
Well,
it was
that's-
not on my radar whatsoever until like 4 years after I had finished undergrad. Before I even thought about grad school.
Wonderful.
So that doesn't mean that you don't need to pay attention. You should pay attention because you might end up
Okay.
going to grad
So
school.
that actually brings me to my first question. So you want to go to graduate school, or you don't know, right? When did you decide to go to graduate school and why? So Dr. Carey has answered. I will also say that when I graduated from college, when I went to college, I didn't know I wanted to major in music. I was in denial. I graduated from college and I did not think about graduate school for several years, at least. And so, we all kind of have a different path, but, again, this is kind of just an answer when you want faculty, but does anyone have other perspectives to share on when you knew that graduate school was in your future?
I changed fields. So I did music ed for my undergrad in Florida, and I thought I would try the audition route my senior year. So I auditioned at several different conservatories, and I got into a few, and one of them was the Cleveland Institute of Music, and I got in, and I was like, well, I'll never get this chance again. So I did ed for my undergrad, and I ended up doing performance for my grad. So I could have gone straight into public school teaching, but I said, you know what, I'm going to try this out, see if there's options. I took the option I got.
I also did my undergrad in ed, and when I finished, I didn't understand this feeling at the time, but I wasn't really feeling strongly pulled to public education, which I think that's something, you should have a passion. If you're going to do music education, you should have a passion for music, absolutely, but you have to have a passion for education as well. It has to be both of those things. And I do. I mean, I'm here teaching. Clearly, I like music. I like education. But when I finished that, I wasn't really feeling pulled to public education, and I didn't understand that. And so now looking back on it, I had this. I still have the desire for like collaboration, and I still wanted to continue educating myself. And for me, what that ended up looking like was just continuing my education. I did my music ed grad, and that's kind of what pulled me into it. It wasn't something. It wasn't a super. There wasn't like a revelation there. I was like, I'm not kind of really ready for the step past the degree into the workforce. So I continued my education because that's what I needed for my journey at the time.
So I went kind of straight from undergrad into grad school. I had a teacher that was very much like, do you want to do this? I was like, sure, why not? And I felt that it was best for me to continue on into grad school for performance, given that I had like the support of a teacher to help guide me through in the weekly lessons to help prepare me. I'd say that'd be like the one thing if you consider taking a gap, like if you're here, you could definitely like connect with your teachers and ask for lessons and pay out of pocket. But while you're in school, you have those resources to help you a bit better along the way. So I really felt more comfortable and knew what I wanted to do. So going straight into it was the better decision for me.
I'm a combination of everything. I did not know what the difference between undergrad, master, or doctorate was, even all the way to freshman year, especially from totally different place. So I have no idea whether I even want to do music, go through many crises that my professor called me in my senior year, like, you're having a senioritis. And I was like, what does that mean? That means it's exactly what you're doing. It's like just doubting yourself, asking where to go. And I think in all of us have those moments, whether it's in undergrad or after. And so I didn't know what to do when my peers were auditioning for school in my senior year. So I just decided to add another degree so that I can stay in school, to take advantage of it. And I thought I loved business, and I did love business. And then only through interning at an investment firm that I thought I actually did not enjoy it. So I think it goes along the music ed. It's like, you think you like something, and you can like something and not work at it. And I think internship is a great way to take advantage while you're in school and take advantage of the summer, because that was very eye-opening. I thought I hated piano. I thought I did not love piano. That was like a love letter. But when you're away from it, then that was my calling. Was like, man, I actually love piano that I did not realize. So I thought that was very beneficial to try to intern as something that you thought you like, and before you graduate, so that you kind of get a foot in the door to know. And so because of that, then I was lucky to know that, never mind, I think I'm gonna give grad school a shot. And so that's my hybrid path.
So for those of us that have doctorates, just so that we kind of cover all the bases, when did you decide to get your doctorate? And why? Did you know when you started, Dr. Hans, did you know when you started your master's degree that you were going to get your doctorate?
No. My master's was a little non-traditional. I got my master's as a part-time student over 4 years while I was teaching. So I graduated from undergrad, I got a job and spent 1 year just doing that high school band job, and then the next 4 years of that job I was taking night classes. And I think when I started teaching high school, I didn't have any plan to go on to get a doctorate. I just, the expectation was that as a public school teacher in that part of Pennsylvania, you'd get a master's at some point in your career because you needed X amount of professional development credits to keep your license, and that was just what I was going to do. But the more I went through my master's while teaching, I realized that I still had a lot to learn and still had a ton of room to grow as a musician and a teacher and a person myself. And I thought that if I left that meat on the bone, so to speak, if I didn't go and try to learn more, I was going to be shortchanging every single student that I would teach for the rest of my life, because I wouldn't be giving them what I feel like I could. So that was kind of the moment in my master's when I decided that I wasn't a finished product yet and I needed to go back to school for more teaching. And that was really it. I loved my job. I loved my students. You know, I could have been very happy there, I think, my entire career, but I knew that I still had more development. You know, I kind of needed some more time to cook a little bit. So I just knew that I would need to continue that journey for me. So it was not something that I planned on doing. It was not a career goal from the beginning. It was just kind of me listening to myself and you know, being honest with what my needs were at the time. So.
Dr. Brown, want to share?
What was the question again?
When you decided it would be,
Do you need some more
When
coffee?
did you decide?
I do actually. Thanks for noticing. I'd love to.
Yeah, putting them on the spot here.
I think my experience was very similar to Devin's in that I think once I committed to the master's, it was with the intent of continuing forward. I didn't know that I would be able to. I kind of did a bit of a change as well. My undergrad is a dual degree in violin performance and music education. So I had an opportunity to take a class with a pretty esteemed composer, Curtis Smith, and I was pretty sarcastic as a kid, you know, no surprise probably to anybody here. And so a lot of his model composition assignments, I was very sarcastic and in them, and you know, tried to figure out weird ways to manipulate the criteria to create something fun, and I just kept getting A's, and he loved it, and I thought I was just being a smart aleck, but within that, you know, he offered me an assistantship. He said, I know that you have to do your intern teaching in the fall, but why don't you come back afterwards and study with me? And I was at that point probably not willing to do that until I talked to my violin professor, Renata Knifick, and she said, this is the best possible scenario for you. You can still study violin with me and play in the orchestra and develop your violin playing. And you know, if you decide to go into, you know, public school teaching afterwards, you will have fulfilled the criteria that Dr. Hans was talking about for the professional teaching license in the state of Michigan. So, so there really wasn't a whole lot of drawback for me to start the master's. But once I kind of, you know, when I started that with composition, it was, you know, with the intent to be very serious about it and to be a very serious student in terms of composing, but also for playing, for violin playing. So, so I didn't know, since I was kind of new to the composition world, I didn't know if I'd have enough time to kind of develop and percolate to get accepted into a doctorate program. And I was probably, I don't know, I didn't do any conventional wisdom for applying to doctorate school. I applied to only dream schools, so which is not really what you're supposed to do. But again, it was an unconventional path in that I was like, if I can't study with this composer, then fine, I'll go and do public school teaching, you know, or whatever. I had doors open to me, right? So, so I really shot for the moon and not knowing if it was going to work, and lo and behold, it worked out. So I was able to study with a Pulitzer Prize winning composer and another composer's internationally acclaimed. So yeah, got some great training, great experiences, and it kind of worked out. So.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
What is violin performance?
It means basically you are betting on your performance ability to get jobs. Am I right, Savannah?
Got a degree in practicing.
Wait, violins.
Oh,
Violins.
it sounded very much like you said
Violins.
Wow. Joe, I feel like you've never met me. I don't think I've ever been in a fight in my life. I'd get my ass handed to me.
There's always violins.
Did you not see me in the? Did you not see me in the Aikido training? I was awful. West Side Story, dance fighting. That's-
That's all.
Man.
I'd just add a little, so my path was just a little bit different than what we've heard, where I left to go to grad school, not to get a master's, but to get a doctorate, but I didn't have a master's yet. So that informed my path and the schools I looked at, and I also went, for me, in a career with a good job, I only applied to my top choice school, and if I was going to get a full ride scholarship to go there, I would go. Otherwise, I was going to stick in my, in my high school teaching position. But knowing that I was trying to get a doctorate when I started the master's really changed the way I looked at schools and what I was looking for in a program, so that I was essentially starting a doctorate with my master's because of the academic rigor in the program that I chose. So that's just a little different path, through it. And I think that you want to think about what your main goal is ultimately when you're starting. And that may change, but predicting the future as much as you can, I guess.
And I would also add that part for me was not only just financial, like whether we have assistantships, that I think is also in the calculation of it, but more like what group of students would you like to have the opportunity to work with. I think that's the biggest difference on, back in our days, I think a lot of our professors only have a master's, if even, but their jobs don't require a doctorate, but right now and going forward for wherever the future will be, is the basic minimum will be requiring that for a lot of opportunities to come, so.
Yeah, and that's actually, for me, that's exactly why I got my doctorate, is because, often in the voice field, you get your undergrad, you get your master's, you go out and you audition and kind of see what happens with that path. Sometimes you get an artist diploma, which we'll talk about. That's kind of like a performing certificate that kind of really makes you more marketable for kind of opera-related things in voice. But for me personally, I knew that I wanted to teach at the university level, and I knew that in order to get, the kind of job that I wanted, I needed to do my doctorate. And also I was interested in continuing to learn and research and study and grow as a performer and as a teacher. So as you can see, there are a lot of different paths and a lot of different, graduate school has looked really different actually for all of us probably. So that's a good thing, there are lots of options. And know that if you go to graduate school in music, you get to forever own a pink hood.
Yes.
I mean,
Which is a great goal.
Yeah.
so, there's that.
I do not own that pink hood.
You could go to graduate school for that. So, or, no?
I never walked.
Okay.
Oh, that's sad.
I had to get one to go sing at graduation. That was the first time I got regalia. I never won.
Yes, so now we only wear regalia when we come to.
I take my
Yeah.
professors.
First time I wore regalia was
Like-
a UAH graduation.
Again, we talked a little bit about this and you shared, we've heard faculty shares, but there are a lot of different options for graduate school. Performance, not violence performance, but performance. Pedagogy, music ed, conducting competition, collaborative piano. We have a number of graduates of our program that are currently and have recently completed degrees in this field. Audio engineering, MBA, we have a voice graduate who completed her MBA at UAH. Some of you may know Madeline Locke. Arts administration. There are many, many options in music and kind of music adjacent. So I wonder, we talked, again, these are just kind of some general questions to guide us. We have a couple of people on this panel who do have artist diplomas. Would you be willing to talk about what that is?
Yeah, so I decided to do the artist diploma after my master's, and I went right through for 8 years for school. I just didn't feel quite ready to be done yet, because a master's goes by so quick if you are a full-time student with 2 years. And I found that your first semester of a master's, you're just figuring out how to work with a new teacher, and then you're expected to be applying or job hunting the next year. So I decided to stay for another 2 years and do the artist diploma, and it just gave me a lot more opportunities with the teacher, to grow as a performer. In my case, I was able to, your course load is less, so I was able to actually get a more full-time church job, so I'm sure you could like teach or something along with that at the same time. But it's very performance heavy. There's not a lot of coursework, hours in the practice room, building that repertoire, those sorts of things.
Did you have a 1 year, are artist
Two.
diploma usually only?
Depends on the school.
Okay,
Some are 1, mine was 2, but it just, every school does things a little bit different.
I feel like voice-related ones are almost always just 1 year. And often you'll do them at, sometimes at the same school, I mean, we don't really have graduate options here in music, but, a lot of people, don't you, Dr. Burrell, you have your undergrad and master's from the same school.
Yeah.
A lot of times people will get their master's and their doctorate from the same school, and you have your diploma.
Master's and artist diploma from the
From
same
the
school.
same school, so that, there are a lot of different options, but that tends to be something, in terms of, we've kind of talked about this, but, if I have my master's degree, do I need to get a doctorate? I mean, that's a question that you could all answer, yes. And
What is exactly like the artist diploma as? Is it just like another just performance, like?
It's another performance certificate. I think people kind of look at it as like half of a doctorate, sort of. Kind of feel like you've done more work, and I chose that versus a doctorate because I just was really tired of the classwork. I didn't want to write a long paper. I didn't want to do the research. I wanted more hands-on practical playing experience, and that was why I chose that route.
My undergrad at UNC Greensboro, they had an artist diploma, but they had a couple people that did it before the master's to kind of come in for the year. They didn't feel like they were quite ready for the master's, study with the teacher, and then re-audition. So
Oh, that's interesting.
that's
I'm not
how
aware of that.
our undergrad teacher kind of did that. But at San Francisco Conservatory, where I did my master's, the artist diploma, most people did it after their master's. But there may have been 1 or 2 that did it before a master's.
Or if they didn't get funding for a doctorate, right? That's like the funding. There's so many spots only for a doctorate program.
I have a question for the panel. How would you describe the difference between your undergraduate studies and, say, your master's studies on a scale of broad or specialized or any of that type of idea? For those students who now are in an undergrad and feeling overwhelmed by with their course load or not breathing through, how would you say the difference is between undergrad and master's?
I'm scared to use this word, but both of the masters that I've done were infinitely more fun than my undergrad. Because if you picked a master's that you're interested in, for me it was music ed and trumpet performance, and you care about it, it's being able to just focus on that thing. Of course, it's still school. It is still school. I'm fully transparent on that. But it's so much more fun just getting to do the thing that you want to do and get better at it.
In the master's, you don't have to do gen eds really at all, so that's off the table. It's pretty much only music. I mean, at the conservatory I went to, it was a lot of playing and not quite as rigorous in terms of the academic side of things. So I would be like taking lessons, chamber ensemble, orchestra, and then maybe 1 or 2 other classes, whether that's like a theory of some sort or like a history. And they were like more specific, so at the graduate level, my history I took was focused on the ballet roots, so it's more specific and not like a broad topic, like music history 1. So it's definitely a lot more individual, less course work to be present at, but maybe more in-depth work on your studies than a broader work.
That being said, I was the one that graded the theory placement exam. So there is a base knowledge that you're expected to have, and they will test you on it. And if you do not pass that test, you will have to take a remedial course that you have to pay for out of your pocket. Your scholarship or assistantship won't cover it. So
Class piano. Oh, if you want numbers, to be full-time graduate, it's 6 credits. You're a full-time student if you take 6 credits of coursework at the grad level, usually.
I think for me, the academic rigor of the master's degree compared to my undergraduate degree, which was like a hustle, and I was busy. I was busy all the time as an undergrad student, doing lots of things. But it was like, okay, read this 700-page book for tomorrow. Have notes. You'll be tested. And so that's what you do with your time, was read. Whenever I was awake and not practicing. Yeah, cool.
What's the difference between an undergraduate internship and a graduate internship?
Depends on your field.
Yeah, it depends on the field. I didn't do internships in my graduate degrees.
Sometimes you can be a TA at the college while you're studying there. That's what I know about graduate.
Like for you, I think you're thinking audio engineering, right? And I think that goes exactly what that is saying. Like, you know, when you're an undergrad, okay, internship, you can't get a GTA, graduate teaching assistantship, because you're not enrolled in a graduate school. And so, for example, if you say you want to go to UA and you're a master's student, they might have opportunities that cannot be presented for undergraduate because you haven't had the
Wait.
education background.
Sorry, Kobe, just to ask a clarifying question. Do you mean internships or do you mean assistantships? Internships.
Which I think is very much kind of in the audio engineering world,
Yeah.
right? You know, and part of our music tech emphasis is the internship, but like in something like performance, your internship is actually like what you do in terms of professional development opportunities, right? You know, it's your church singing job, it's your summer program, it's your, you know, so that's kind of like your internship as a performer specifically, or if you're music ed, it's, you know, your student teaching, right, is your internship. So, and we don't have a slide today on entrance exams for graduate school, you know, but I think we can all attest to pay attention,
Yep.
right? Pay attention in Dr. Morell's class real hard, you know, and keep all your notes,
Keep your
right?
books.
Study
keep
over
your
the
notes.
summer.
Keep
Stuff.
your notes.
Yes,
No,
yes, yes.
no
When I
pressure,
went
but
to
I have
my
a
doc-
100%
when I had to take my
success rate.
exams- What?
I have a 100% success rate, including Andrew Creech at Northwestern passing.
Yes.
He was one of the few, so
Yeah.
don't blow it for me.
No, but and seriously, I mean, maybe you might go right on to your degree, but I personally, you know, from the time I started my doctorate, I had graduated from undergrad 12 years prior, and so studying for my entrance exams, and I just didn't want to take any remedial courses, so I pulled out all my books from my master's degree and I still had my Aldwell Schachter.
Oh, that's a doozy.
Yeah, like my old school textbook from my undergrad, and I studied my music theory so that I didn't have to take the remedial courses.
You're
Also,
welcome
like-
you don't have that book.
Also, like, yeah, there's tests, but like never in a million years I think I'd be teaching music history. So I definitely wish I had like paid attention more in some of my undergrad classes, so I'd retained more rather than the like quick retain to pass the exam. So you never know like where your career is going to lead you in the future. So take advantage of what you're learning now, and all the resources and tools you have.
Nobody wants remedial counterpoint.
So just a question, when you applied to graduate school, how many schools did you apply to?
In my first master's, I went straight from undergrad to master's because I talked about, you know, I finished my internship. I was like, this is not, I don't really want to go into this right now. So I went straight back to the school that I did my undergrad in, and finishing that master's, it was a little bit odd. I only applied to one school because my term professor at the time, his alma mater was looking for, they had a jazz assistantship come open, and they needed somebody who could come in and play high notes in their jazz band and do assistantship things with them, and that was my specialty. He sent some videos to the term professor there who had posted the thing, so it was like, it was very, I don't know, I had set myself up in a way where people knew I was reliable. I showed up on time. I was professional. They could rely on me. So for me, I didn't end up applying just because it all just kind of happened. I want to say incidentally, but not incidentally. I mean, it was so kind of rambling answer, but
6.
Okay.
3.
10, and do not recommend. I did.
I applied to 4, and they were all kind of like Dr. Burrell said, for his doctorates, like reach schools. I stayed in state for undergrad, so I saved a good amount of money doing that and decided that if I was gonna spend 2 more years of my life in education, I wanted it to be worthwhile and study with a good teacher, and whatever student loan debt that meant, which maybe not the wisest, but it is what it is.
I did 4.
6.
So I visited 5, but I only applied at 1 when I was going to grad school, but because I had decided, I was in a good job, like I wasn't desperate. It was different when I was finishing the master's and applying for the doctorate. I think I applied to 4 schools for the doctorate, just to be safe, because like I got to get somewhere and I'll have a job.
I actually happened to go to school, almost graduated my master's by accident, because I moved to Montana to where my husband, he was not my husband at the time, but I moved for love, and then I went back. So, but, you know, it was the right time and the right, you know, it was just the right thing.
How many did you apply for?
Well, I'm still in my process right now. I have a completely different story than everybody else here, because when I started my degree ages ago, music tech was very terminal. You know, there wasn't a place to even get a bachelor's degree. Well, you know, there was MTSU, but back then Full Sail wasn't even accredited yet. So my journey's been a little bit more building like the slow uphill on the reverse escalator, you know, type journey. But it's different for you guys now, because now we have places like there's all kinds of music tech, not only master's degrees but doctorates now in places like Berkeley and MTSU, and I've got a whole list of them here too as well. So that path is now, you know, easier for you guys, but it wasn't even there for me. You know, growing up. So I've learned by teaching you guys for 20 years. That's what's taught me.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about that too, because different fields, you know, have kind of different or standards or traditions that are changing about whether or not you go to grad school. And when we get to our professional development, many of our grads from the music tech program are just working in their field, you know, in various areas of you know, the country. So, so move on. Okay, so again, I'm going to post this all so you kind of have this as a resource. Those of you who are applying for graduate schools in the near future, you just as a side note, so far we do have other things already up on the Canvas page. For instance, the lecture from last week, the video. But you know, these are just some things to consider, right? The school's reputation, you know, who you will be studying with, right? Because I think your teacher is really, you know, the person that you choose to study with. Oftentimes we go to a school specifically to study with one person, right? A main teacher. How likely is it that you'll get admitted? Maybe you apply to 4 reach schools, or maybe you apply to 10, you know, across the board, you know. Cost, it's expensive these days, but assistantship opportunities and knowing what they are and your likelihood, again, it's wonderful that you shared that, because this idea that, like, you know, sometimes it's just someone knows us, right? And someone knows, oh, they were a great school in their undergrad, or they can play high notes, or they can sing high notes, or, you know, whatever. I want them for my assistantship. So those are things to consider. And then typical length of program, and then also where do you want to live in the country? I know for my doctorate, I had decided I just wanted to live on the West Coast, and so that's where I went. But I don't necessarily recommend that as an absolute, you know, determining factor, but that was one of my main choices. Yes.
So with geographical location, I've heard like Pennsylvania, Florida, Michigan. What about y'all in Huntsville? Like in
The job.
Montana?
The job.
Yeah. So
Wisconsin.
one of three tenure track choral conducting positions in the United States of America that year. That's why I'm here. I mean, it's just incredibly competitive. Like to brag on your tenure track faculty, like it was really hard to get these jobs. So there's just not a lot of jobs. It's just incredibly competitive. so, yeah, that's why.
For me, the job, but then also a connection to my undergrad teacher. I work with the youth orchestra. I came to the camp as an intern, and that's how I'm here. And like tied to grad school programs, like getting to meet the people and them knowing you definitely, I feel like, helps your chances of getting in. They can keep you on their radar for scholarships. While if you show up on the last audition day, maybe they've already thought about who they want to give scholarships or assistantships to. So connections are important.
Connections are incredibly important. I was on the search committee that hired Professor Barlow for the youth orchestra, and I had known her years before and knew she'd be a good fit. And me, along with the other people on the committee, we called her and said, "Hey, would you be interested? We think you'd be a good fit. Obviously, you got to interview, but would you be interested?" Right? So connections are incredibly important in how you get to different places, right? And that's just one practical example right there. Yeah.
I'd say there's like that cliche of it's not what you know, it's who you know. I would say that that's not accurate, but there's a grain of truth there. It's not what you know, it's who knows what you know. Who knows what you can do? Who knows that you're reliable? Who knows that you'll show up on time, prepared, ready to go? That's what really matters, I think, is building that reputation for yourself, wherever you are. And then those connections will help you out.
Yeah, I think that's the most important part, is being the professional, because if you know somebody, that somebody can completely put you out of the list because of, showing up at rehearsals or constantly making excuses, and we all have those peers that essentially weed it out themselves.
I'd
Well,
like
I
to
think
add
also
too,
for-
like, also just body of work and like being able to have like, not necessarily a portfolio, but just being able to show, what you've done for those that haven't seen it, like self-marketing, even online presence, that definitely helps like the music tech side a lot. I even have a networking story of how I got here too, like the fact that Miss Doty called me to interview back in 2016 was because the person that applied before was one of my buddies that I recorded in a band, and he just gave me a call. So it's all networking. Like you have to put yourself out there and show what you can do to folks.
So Dr. Carey, some of you know we share the same mentor, but Dr. Carey was the sabbatical replacement for our mentor my first year of my doctorate. So that's how I met Dr. Carey. And then when I saw this job come open, I said, "Oh, well, Dr. Carey's there." And so I called him and I said, "Hey, there's this job open. Tell me about it. What's Huntsville?" And so before I moved here, before I even applied for the job, I had all kinds of information about what it was like to live in Huntsville, what the job was like, all. So, I don't know that I would be here without, necessarily without that, that connection. And it just so happened, I probably hadn't seen you for 5 years.
Oh yeah, and mine's the same way, where like the person who was in Dr. Osaga's position, a couple generations ago, was a classmate of mine at University of Oregon who knew me well and called me to ask me to apply for the position, because I wasn't actually looking for a job here when I applied, but yeah, it's just those connections of, like, you want somebody to think, I got this opening for a tenure. Oh, it's Anthony. That's who we got to call, right? Like that you want to live your life like that, so that the people around you will think of you in that way.
A lot of our instructors have that story, right? We, Professor Underwood, right? I know his teacher, so I called his teacher and said, "Hey, do you have anybody you recommend?" And he said, "Yeah, this guy." So there's lots of great stories that are like that, right? Of how we all kind of, now I get to play with him and get to teach with him and work with him, and what a treat, right? So it's a very small community, but it's very, I think, very, very welcoming and nice if you can, display yourself in the way that everybody's talking about, right? So be professional, be on time, do good work, right? And just be a good person. It goes a long way. So a lot of people who are really good at what they do, but they're mean. And then nobody wants to work with them.
Selfish artists. Like people, like don't give, ensemble.
It's all here for reference, because I think, whether it's sometime in December. You have your admission application. You have often the deadline for the assistantship, if you're applying to an assistantship, or they call it a graduate employee, PE. And then if there is a pre-screen reporting round, it's often when you hand in your initial application. And then, you know, sometime in January, you'll usually get notified of a live audition, or there'll be the deadline to kind of have your formal audition. Mid-March, you get awards notices for acceptance, and then you usually have to accept by a certain time. So that's kind of what the timeline looks like. There are a lot of pieces to the puzzle in terms of, you know, your application. Did you all take GREs? I think, you know, you have to, no, some schools require GREs. They're kind of going, I don't know exactly, I don't know what they're doing now. I haven't seen
I think
it.
for psychology,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for writing was ecology.
Okay, so, you know, more exams that you have to prepare to take therein. And so then this is kind of, just a little bit more detail. One really important part of this process, is securing letters of recommendation, right? And so again, I just put these very clear steps of, you know, usually you need 3. You should talk to your main teacher, and then, you know, a couple of other professors. You know, it's important that you don't just send a text or an email randomly to your teacher. You know, have an in-person conversation. I'm interested in applying to graduate school. Where do you suggest I apply? Would you be willing to write me a recommendation? So these face-to-face conversations, I think, are really important. And then you need to follow up, right? So I put a whole little list of things, right? And I even have included a lovely sample. Some of you will know who this is, but I will. So say you're okay. So here's the timeline before we do this. So say you are your applications are due December 10th. Dr. Hans, your applications are due December 10th. When would you ask your 3 recommenders to write your letters?
August.
Ooh, August. Okay. Any other?
At the absolute minimum, 1 month in advance.
Okay.
Absolute minimum.
Say November 1st,
Yeah.
Yeah.
be a good idea.
So you have something due December 10th. November 1st, there needs to have been a face-to-face conversation and then an email, right? I think I received this particular email from a student a number of years ago now. And again, you can review this on your own. I will give you access to this. This was a very, very clear letter. You know, we had a conversation. She followed up. Thank you for agreeing to write me a letter. I've included all the information that you need, right? The deadlines, attachments. I'm not going to show you the but you know, she included her resume and her statement of purpose that you often have to write for your grad school, and then a very clear list of the schools that they were applying to, and then you know, what the process was, right? So I think that arrived maybe mid-October for a mid-December, you know, thing. And then when I started to receive the, you know, because the school will contact you and just say, you have been, you know, listed as a recommender for blah, blah, blah. And then she followed up to say, hey, you should be getting these emails if you're having trouble. You know, here's the email address or the phone number for the, you know, the tech support. And she clearly knew that she's talking to someone who might need some tech support. So, you know, just all of the information on the follow-up reminders. Okay?
I would add
Yes.
also to let your professor know, even the semester before, that you intend to go for grad school. It can change the repertoire that you study. I had a high school student not tell me that she wanted to go into music until like April of the year she was going to apply. So I'm like, this is April, you have applications due in December. We need to talk about repertoire, what level of playing you need to achieve. So you try to give your professors like semesters of notice, because that can really change what you're studying as well.
Other thoughts about kind of letters of recommendation slash all the things, yeah.
You're writing those yourself every day right now. That's what we put in. Like we want to write really good things about you. But you've got to be those things so that we can write them. And be them consistently, I think. Like, because I've also noticed like people be slacker, and decide to go to grad school, and all of a sudden like now they're on time for my class. It's like, okay. But not that any of you would do that. That's what I'm saying. But
I think
Well,
when,
just to add to that too, you know, like any example, like we need to see like examples of big things you've done that we can include in those, you know, like throughout the semester too, like notable things that you know stand out.
I've actually had recommenders in the past say, hey, write me 3 paragraphs about the good things that you're doing right now, or that, and then actually those paragraphs appeared in the letter. Sometimes they share. One thing I put at the end, which is at the very end, and this is something to consider. So it said, she says, for all of these applications, I will be waiving my right to access or view my letters of recommendation. Again, that's your choice. I personally think it's a good idea, right? Just because, I think it shows like trust, right, between you, but you want to make sure that, again, the people that you're reaching out to for letters are not the people whose classes you failed, right? So, I mean, I don't think that's going to be the case, but again, you have to think about when you're, obviously your main teacher, right? But so say, I'm choosing between asking Dr. Hans and Dr. Burrell, who's going to write my recommendation. I really want to think through, one, how well do they know me, right? And how well can they speak to my talents and my gifts, right? And also, just really think clearly, right? Before you reach out, because again, I have had colleagues in the past, actually, no one on this stage, that have been asked to write letters of recommendation and haven't felt positive about that. And there's nothing more challenging, right, than to feel like you can't write it. We want to write the most glowing letters about our students, right? But we have to also be honest and clear and with how we're doing that. So,
and I want to add, I think when we went to grad school, our professors mail in physical letters, and the graduate school just accepted. Right now, we're on the other side, actually, because of the online portal, and I think just the nature of going back to what Dr. Burrell mentioned earlier, the personality, do you get along? Those are actually criteria. A lot of letters that we recently submitted have you rank about the personality, the leadership skills, you're just writing, are you in top 5, are you in top 1, are you top 10 or bottom 10? So going to Dr. Carey supporting that is like those are in addition. As I said, when she wrote that, I don't think that portal was like that, but nowadays every single application that I think we recently written has asked to evaluate you as a person in addition to the letter. So how you show up to your peers and just a community member of a university is speaking volume every minute.
I can say that 2 of the universities where I've been involved had people who would out of hand dismiss any applicants who didn't waive their right to see their letters. That was one way that they chose to make the pool smaller, right? Because there's just so many people applying, they have to find ways to cut down those number of applicants that they have to like carefully look at. And so that is one that this is an easy thing. Like if they didn't waive their right to it, we just throw their stuff out and we don't look at it and we move on to the next. Now every place has done that, but 2 of the places that I've been involved at.
And some professors won't write the letters unless you waive your right to,
Yeah,
so
that's
that's another thing to think about.
It used to be not even a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's only very new.
Yeah. When I applied,
That
there
was
was
no
never an
choice.
option of like, I want to see this. It was like, it's understood. But
Yeah, that's why I
you
said
don't
it
get
was,
to see
it was a seal signature. If
Yeah.
I didn't mail that letter, that is with seal signature, you were done.
Oh, that's right.
That's why I want to ask. That's what I say. Of course, it should be automatically rejected because it speaks a volume about your personality. If you are so picky about what your recommender should be writing, then
I have
Yeah.
I had a mentor back in, a long time ago, who I still have like one of his old name written across. It's actually Marshall Williamson, for those who are taking the art song class. It's the one who wrote the 23 points of the song. He was like
Yeah, I kept
90
mine
years
too.
old. I have.
Yeah.
It's in my files. Good, so this is kind of a lot of information, and you'll have, you know, a lot of it to look at. I wanted to give you all this perspective on the grad school. Maybe it might be years, or maybe you will decide not to go to graduate school, but just so you have that information. In terms of, so we're a little bit short on time, but I wanted to kind of just show you that your faculty here has given, we have a number of pages about different resources, yeah? So for composition and music theory focus, Dr. Burrell has included some websites. I think this is a good way of saying, you know, join societies, right, and meet people and go to conferences. You know, these kinds of things are how you kind of meet people in advance and in the field. Again, I just want to also for general instrumental and then percussion. So Aaron, you have a plethora of percussion-related resources, but there are also things that apply to, for instance, the TAPS Percussion Festival includes percussion, strings, and piano. So there are some, you know, a lot of festivals that include other instruments. Also, I think is what's interesting, and you could always, I'm sure, ask us, but you know, Ms. Swante included, you know, the specific requirements for the 2 schools that she went to, yeah, and so I think it doesn't hurt to kind of do a little research, right, on the schools that we went to, right, and see, you know, and ask us what our thoughts are about those particular programs and if we would recommend them. Yes.
Yeah, can I just add one, because I didn't get a chance to put anything up here, but for audio engineering too, there's also a good networking group that the Audio Engineering Society, and also Hey Audio Student on Facebook has been really good at networking on our end.
And so what I'm going to do is that this list is incomplete right now. This is just kind of like a sample, and I will spend, you know, another 4 or 5 days kind of collecting information, and then before I publish it on Canvas, I'll just make sure that we have a complete list of any professional development resources to take advantage of. I just kind of want to show you a little bit. There are some from Ms. Matthews, there are some orchestral-related opportunities, and some of these, for instance, she lists Aspen Music Festival. That's also listed on the Voice Resources page. You know, so a lot of these festivals have, you know, options for many instruments. And again, ask your teachers questions about these. Ask us questions. And then we also have some choral opportunities from Dr. Carey, and some vocal programs. There are many, and I will continue to add so that we have just resources that you all can access if you want. There is, and also sometimes know that, you know, when the email blast that Ron sends out, for instance, he recently sent one out. There are some really good scholarship audition opportunities. So the Birmingham Music Club, I've adjudicated that competition. The level is quite high, and it's a wonderful competition, and you win quite a lot of money. I mean, it's like $30,000, you know, for the top winner, and all, you know, there are opportunities to win scholarships. So that is open to instrumentalists, pianists, and vocalists. There are local ones, the Huntsville Music Study Club, and the HCCA has a choral scholarship that we've had past students of ours win. So there are local opportunities for scholarships, and we have a group of vocalists going to the Alabama Nats student auditions in a couple of weeks. So finally, I just put some general resources. Musical America has a great website if you want to look up summer programs around the world. If you want to look up graduate schools, they have a really very detailed list. I mean, they listed a music graduate school in Afghanistan and all of the requirements. I mean, it's very comprehensive. And then to again, there is a link to the Birmingham Music Study Club, and then the MTNA as well. So just a little bit of a smattering of things. Any final last questions for your panel here? Yes.
I don't have a question, but I want to add on a little bit if I may. So I am a student here, but I also teach on the other side of campus in the sciences. And I really wish, I hope everyone applies to a graduate music program. But if you're applying for a graduate program in another discipline, please do not forget to emphasize your music training. It is an incredible asset. And I'll give you an example. I've been on the admissions committee on a PhD program in biological sciences. And we go through stacks of applications. And we had this student that, at least in the science level, was not stellar, but made the minimal requirement. And this person was not going to be considered to be accepted. And I was on this committee, and I noticed in a very small footnote, bottom of the page, that under hobbies, that he played music. And I think it was a violin, not violent. And so I actually looked him up, and he ended up to be a concert master in his college. He played violin almost all his life. High school, all-state, he was a star. And I pulled him right up. And I said, if this person can do so incredibly well with such a precise art, and this goes for in companies, that if you are able to be practicing in a practice room for hours a day and have so much concentration, you will be able to do anything. So anyways, the rest of the committee agreed. They didn't even see that. And so I know that in a lot of graduate programs outside of music, there's at least one person who's very familiar with the vigor of studying music. And if that person is not doing music, they have kids that are doing music, and they understand this. And this is the same thing for companies if you're going to work. I know Boeing across the street, we've had a lot of discussion. If you had two equivalent resume or applications, and one has a music study like a minor or major, they will go for the major one. So anyways, if you are not, I wish all of you would, but if you're not applying for music, make sure, do not put your music training as a footnote. Emphasize that. It is an incredible asset.
There are a lot of schools that have joint programs, so you could go to like Columbia, for example, but also study with a teacher at Juilliard. You could go to Case Western Reserve University for research, but also study with someone at CIM. There are a lot of joint programs that allow you to do that.
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go to your conventions and your conferences for your area. You're not only going to meet people, but a lot of these colleges are represented there, and you may find one that wasn't even on your radar. I mean, that happened to me for grad school. I never thought I would move from New York to Texas for grad school. But it was a very last-minute application for me, and it ended up being the best fit. So just go meet people, show up professionally, and it's a good place.
Have you seen her car? It's the same color as her school colors, so it's
Not intentionally, but
left an impact, at least subliminally.
Also, speaking of conventions too, we in Huntsville have the Huntsville Music Office, and we have a quarterly meeting that happens with them. And this, is not only geared towards sound guys and club owners, it's also geared towards musicians and showing you guys venues around town to play and things that the city is kind of working on currently with the music diplomacy and things like that. So if look up Huntsville Music Office and the Music Quarterly meetup that they do. It's usually at the Orion and sometimes at Mars Music Hall. But yeah, they're free to attend as well, and really great networking opportunities.
Thank you all so much. Any final thoughts? Yes? Okay. Have a great rest of your
was like, hey, this is a piano student. So anyway,